Welcome to Chalk Talk, a weekly preview of West Tennessee football featuring the JSUN sports team here on JacksonSun.com.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Week 4 edition of the High School Football Chalk Talk. My name is Craig Thomas, along with the sports editor and high school football beat writer Brandon Shields. As always, lots of good games to look forward to. We've 4 weeks into the season now, going into the 5th week here, Week 4, and we'll start right here in the city as Liberty is back home to take on Jackson Central Mary.
Yeah, it's the second week of district play for pretty much everybody on this end of the state. And Liberty JCM is one of the more interesting games because you look at it when you're trying to preview it or whatever, and you see that both teams are 2-2, and you see that both teams are 1-0 in district play. But then you look at their schedules and you see that a 2-2 for Liberty isn't quite the same thing as a 2-2 for JCM. Liberty's had a little bit harder of a schedule, whereas the two toughest teams that JCM has played, they've lost to. Mm-hmm. So you kind of wonder, can JCM hang with Liberty? I'm not going to make a pick, yes or no, but if JCM wants to prove that they are one of the better teams around here and they want to do something in the playoffs, this is the game where they need to prove that they can actually do something.
All right, should we get? And that one will be at Lane Field, right?
Right now it's planned to be,
okay.
But that's still up in the air.
Mm-hmm. Would they go to Liberty, I guess, as a backup?
Right.
Okay. Another game here in the city, Trinity Christian Academy hosts a Scottsdale team that started out 3-0, a lot of good vibe, took a tough loss this past week. What are you looking for out of the Scottsdale Trinity game?
Well, talking with TCA's coach Blake Butler earlier this week when they were named number 1 in the state by the Associated Press and the Tennessee Sports Writers poll, I was talking to him about the game, and he said this isn't the typical Scottsdale that we're used to seeing. The huge offensive line, the running game that works and can rack up some yards. That's stuff that you've never had to deal with, or teams never had to deal with when they played Scottsdale in the past. But now there is something there to deal with, and TCA's got to be ready. I think Butler will have his team ready for that game. I don't think they're going to win 55-7 like they did last year on a Saturday night. This will definitely be a time to see just how legit Scottsdale really is. If they just simply compete with TCA, particularly coming off of the game where they didn't look too great against Brewston last week, I'll be more of a believer in them.
And I guess this for Trinity, this is kind of a test for their defense too, because they've scored all these points, but they've also given up a lot of points in most of these games as well. Yeah,
they gave up 28 last week and 42 the week before to some pretty good offenses there. But it's as the playoffs get closer, they need to start getting that defense a little better to be able to combat some of the athletic teams they're going to see in the playoffs.
All right, Jackson Northside will be heading out of town to play Ripley. The Indians are 4-0. They've had some good wins. They play pretty solid football, it seems like, most every week. What are you hearing? What do you know about Northside going into this Ripley game?
Well, I know Ripley has kind of underachieved the last couple of weeks against Westview and JCM, particularly in that JCM game. This is a team that's got, I think, like 25 seniors, 26 seniors, something like that. It's supposed to have really good offense, and the first couple weeks of the season against lesser competition, they showed that they can score some points, and then they kind of laid an egg against JCM. I think they only scored 1 touchdown. And then last week they competed well with Westview. But I think you were there last year when this matchup, when Northside needed one of the biggest miracles of the whole year.
I remember that.
In a very miraculous season.
In a very wet night.
Yeah. To pull out a win against Ripley. I will say this, for Northside, going on the road to Ripley against a team as athletic and as experienced as Ripley is, they can't afford to fall behind like they did last year, because that comeback and that miracle play at the end may not be there this time around.
So those are some of the top games involving some Jackson teams, but there are some really good ones out in the region if you look. And one of those right now, 3-1 Milan visits undefeated Martin Westview at UTM. What are you looking for out of that game?
Well, I talked to Westview head coach Don Cody earlier in the week, and he was just talking about how his team has been good enough to win each week, to go into this game undefeated. They were good enough to beat Huntington by 1 point. They were good enough to beat Ripley by 3 points last week. in between, they were good enough to beat South Gibson by 8 points. Really, the only time they've really had a dominant win that you would expect out of a Westview team that's undefeated was the dressing game in week 0. I think this is going to be another game where they're going to have to try to be good enough because last year they kind of put it on Milan pretty good. It may have even been running clock there for a little while when Milan was going through all their injuries and suspensions and stuff like that. But Milan's shown that this isn't a team, well, it's already shown that it's a team that's not going to go 3-7 because, well, I guess they still technically could since they're 3-1 at this point.
But probably not.
Probably not, though. But with the schedule, it is a possibility that they got. But there's a lot to play for in this one. Two teams that seem to have played each other every year for the last 50 years, although Cody did say there's a couple of years since Jeff Morris has been the head coach they didn't play. But they know each other well, and they both know that both teams are kind of throwing the ball a little more this year than they usually do. So I could see this being a defensive struggle, but I could also see it being an offensive shootout as well.
Brandon, you'll be in Alamo to watch Crockett County 4-0 take on a Dyersburg team that's also undefeated and might stand as so far the toughest test. Crockett's beaten some good teams, no doubt, but this Dyersburg team, could be a threat. What are you expecting to see when you go up there?
Well, I was putting together some preview stuff for this game today, or earlier today, and we're filming this on Tuesday, and neither of these teams have really been challenged yet. They're both averaging scoring, I think, like nearly 50 points a game. I think Crockett's a little more than 50 points a game, and giving up maybe an average of 13 points a game. So they're both winning, running away just about every game. Crockett has beaten a couple of good teams. Milan particularly is kind of the team that sets their schedule apart from Dyersburg at this point, because probably the toughest team that Dyersburg has beaten so far would probably be JCM, who they beat in week 0. So, Dyersburg doesn't have quite the size that they had last year when they kind of ran roughshod over District 13 AA last year and made it to the state quarterfinals. But they still have their speed. Both their running backs are back, and they got a quarterback who's a little more mobile than Will Bradshaw was last year. Can Crockett County's defense stop that? That'll be a big question. But another big question is, can the offensive line continue to block for Johnny Jones and allow him to get his 500 yards that he usually gets game in, game out, and 5 touchdowns?
Right. Last year, Camden had a good season, got to the second round of the playoffs, went to Hohenwald, lost to Lewis County. Camden has not lost since, and they are going to be taking on that same Lewis County team, which is also undefeated up to this point, this time at Camden. What do you think might happen up there?
Well, Lewis County hadn't lost since they made it to the semifinals last
Right.
year and got beat by CPA. This is an undefeated matchup. And there's still 4 undefeated teams left in District 11 AA, but these two appear to be the best 2 teams in the district. I'm kind of looking forward to just 2 teams that like to ground and pound it, grounding and pounding and getting the game over with in less than an hour. Because they just keep running the ball and no drop passes. It's a sports writer's dream right there.
Right.
Camden's got a good defense. They've got a good ground game. But Lewis County, while they did lose a lot of good players from last year's team, they still got, it's Lewis County. They're one of those, kind of like a Milan or a Westview. They're just good every year. I think we can put Camden in that group as well. So a couple of proud programs in the same district, probably playing for the district championship this Friday.
Should be pretty fun. Obviously, lots at stake. Even here in week 4, lots of things that could decide kind of how the season goes along. You'll want to be part of that. And so we encourage you on Friday morning, get the newspaper. Friday Morning Blitz has capsules. If you've been following along, you've seen how informative that is. Kind of some players to watch, some keys to watch for all the games involving teams in the Jackson Suns coverage area, including these games that we've just discussed. Friday night, obviously coverage throughout the night. We'll have writers at a lot of these games and several others as well. You can follow us on Twitter. JS editor Brandon will have some updates, especially from Crockett County, but also some halftime and full scores there on our Jackson Sun Sports Facebook page. That's a good thing to like and to follow as well, because we'll have the scores. Then obviously Friday night is stories and videos and photos roll in. Lots of good things to check out on our website at jacksonsun.com and in print Saturday morning. So we thank you for checking in. Brandon, anything else you'd like to add?
Thanks to Kenny Cummings for producing this video and filming it. Our photographer, big guy that a lot of people know when he shows up at games. So
absolutely, he gets the job done. Well, we thank you guys for tuning in. We hope to see you Friday night. Have a great week.
See ya.